conflicts and the war on terrorism. The meaning of terrorism. Now, it has several definitions. It is defined as problematic. One of the definitions is it focuses on terrorism carried out by individuals and or groups. It ignores state terrorism altogether. The second could be it emphasizes the political objective of terrorist acts. And the third is the frame acts as criminal events and downplays the political motivations. However, one clear among all these definitions is that terrorism is a method or means of achieving an objective, not an aim or objective itself. It has one full-on goal. Second, we'll go into terrorism moral judgment. It conveys a moral judgment about a group's illicit activity. Labeling a group as terrorists, it transmits moral disapproval. Meaning, it fosters a public fear of continued unpredictable attacks on civilians. It demonizes all terrorists, no matter the motivation or strategy. It denies an understanding of the terrorist point of view and minimizes the negotiation with any terrorist. This means that it basically puts the terrorists not in any power or much of the power and not understanding why they are doing it. As in, we should not negotiate with terrorists by any means. It encourages the use of force and violence to counter terrorists. It enables the government to exploit fears of the public and overrule any objection to respond to any and counter any terrorist. It should always put the safety of the public first and overrule the objection of just making sure everyone's safe and overruling and making sure the terrorist is dealt with. Warfare and or crime control. So soon after 9/11, the United States designed its counterterrorism strategy as war on terrorism. This was not like any other war, not like war on drugs, not like war on poverty. This was a war on terrorism. These strategies, plans, and operations are characterized as warfare rather than law enforcement, meaning it is shown to be that this was a different approach than what as the United States was used to. We were more going after 9/11, more to the approach of being more aggressive. On March 2009, the Obama administration altered the name from Global War on Terror to Overseas Contingency Operation. War on terrorism is a real war that incorporates elements of conventional war. It uses force of power and aggression and force. The difference is it directed not at states but individuals and groups of people who practice terrorism as a method of achieving their political and other goals. It continued until the war is defeated. There is no defined endpoint which has room for failure. It's not sustainable or affordable. There is no way we could not continue to fight a war that has no endpoint and no meanings of being able to keep being funded if we kept on with that war. A criminal justice approach to terrorism. The justice system lacked the capacity to prosecute terrorism. The criminal justice is not shown as an approach that should be going towards terrorism. A more warlike approach should be for terrorism. War with a peace treaty, while criminal justice is always an ongoing effort. Criminal violation is specific and individual, while the target of a war is a group of numerous enemies in form of an army On January 20th, 2004, President Bush abandoned a criminal strategy for counterterrorism. After the World Trade Center was attacked in 1993, some of the guilty were indicted and tried and convicted, then sent to prison. Terrorists were still training and plotting in other nations, drawing up more plans. Even though they were convicted as criminals, this strategy seemed to the United States was not able to continue, because if we released them, they were still being able to draw attacks against us. After the damage of 9/11, not enough of our to serve our enemies with legal papers. Terrorists and supporters declared war on the United States, and war is what they got. The criminal justice system lacked the capacity to prosecute terrorism. War with a peace treaty, while criminal violation is specific and individual, while the target of war is a group of numerous enemies in the form of an army. Categorization of the enemy, because criminals are stereotyped as atypical as military forces are not. A declaration of war is a statement that the survival of the nation is at stake, and all resources are devoted to war. Which, all in all, wars tend to call up a harsher and less equitable set of values because survival is at stake, and we do what we need to do to keep our civilians and us as a nation safe. Wartime is collateral damage to civilians, and targeting one's forces are mistakes that can't be undone or corrected. Risk on warlike approach. Danger. A military response could provoke a wider conflict. Deaths of innocent civilians will diminish international sympathy, meaning if deaths happen of our civilians, many will look as this is a war they caused, for what they brought upon is upon them. And then the continued gain of support of allies when military actions are taken unilaterally. They would not have as much backup as we would when we continued. Military action will give rise to false expectations of a total defeat of terrorism. The probability of deaths or injury of members of the civilian population, given the lethality of weaponry and firepower. There would be much more deaths that would be caused to our population because of it. And war constitutes a greater evil than terrorism because its potential to cause a great number of deaths and destruction. Many innocent lives may be taken from a war like this. And it potentially could cause many different wars to our nation. If one war comes uprising, there could be different wars that would come up. Justifications for waging wars. The employment of warlike measures, such as military strikes and battlefields, the tension with law enforcement measures, such as arrest and extradition, meaning what are some pros of a waging war? This could become many employment for our country as military. Measures that we would be able to arrest many of these terrorists. It enables the executive branch of government to exercise wide powers under the authority of the president as commander-in-chief, coming under the president, being able to go under his orders. It gives leverage to demand almost any resources in advancement of winning the war, would be able to win the war. Other responses to terrorism, Wilkinson's model. The government must avoid overreactions. Actual restrictions on liberty are to be weighted against risk to security. What we lose in liberty is gained in security. And the debate has been centered whether all restrictions at all should be imposed. 9/11 has shown that the U.S. public has become more willing to accept restrictions on rights and freedom. Wilkinson believes that terrorists must be suppressed with crushing military force. Given the FBI wide and unprecedented access to information previously kept private. And the actual restrictions, some limiting restrictions. We are limited to countering terrorism. Government should not take advantage of a terror situation to abuse exceptional powers, and government must avoid repressive overaction. They should not be able to just go out of a whim and make a decision right then and there. It should be definitely planned and talks. Right? Restriction balancing, some framework for government action. Government must impose restrictions. They rely on public support and guard against overreacting and become too repressive. Should be on demand as well. Torture methods in the war on terror, the practice of waterboarding, which was unfortunate. Waterboarding was where they would grab a terrorist and put them on a board and put water over them and basically drown them. At the end of the day, that was something that was unethical. However, it was a terrorist. So there comes the question, is this liable? Are we liable for this? Is this right or is this wrong? That's where the morality comes into this. Obama did believe it was torture. The United States was shown to have secretly rendered prisoners to countries such as Egypt and Jordan, because in those countries, torture was shown as okay, is something that is not new to those countries. Those countries will deem in things such as torture. Countries such as these have employed very aggressive techniques. They use forms of torture to secure information relevant to the war on terror. That's how they get information. In 2008, the Congress voted to limit the CIA to use only interrogation techniques authorized by the Army Field Manual. It was supposed to be under them, a handbook to show what was okay, what was legal, and what was not. And now the morality of torture, going again, what is moral, what is not, what are we able to do, what's ethically justified. After 9/11, the law following the U.S. ratification of the Convention Against Torture showed that there was some use of force. However, where is the line we should draw? And lastly, treating human being not as a moral person, but treating them as a moral person, but not an object. Torture damages human dignity, and it devalues human life and corrupts the institutions and officials of democratic society. There should be a line to what is the line of torture and when is it taking too far. And that is my whole outline of chapter 10 on the outline of the war on terrorism.